So I am in the process of making a career change and trying to become a physical therapist. And so I just completed my first prerequisite for that. It was a 6-week human anatomy course that I took through College of Alameda, and I had like an amazing time, learned so much, really like my classmates, really like my professor. And so this past week was the last week of that class, and I'm just like, yeah, pretty stoked.
That's got to feel great. So
Hmm.
are you
Hmm.
was it a certificate program kind of thing, or was it more just like a a prerequisite to something else too, that to get yourself
Yeah.
up and going? Yeah.
Yep. It's a prereq that I'll need to apply to physical therapy programs.
Got it. Got it.
Hmm.
Well, congratulations.
Thanks. Thank
That's
you.
got to feel great. And so you have a background in data science
Yeah.
and kind of more statistics and things like that.
Yep. Yep.
Uh, so what led what kind of inspired this change?
Uh, well, just a long process of realizing that work was just not. I was not well suited to that kind of work. I'm not well suited to spending that amount of time sort of in my own head working on sort of purely intellectual problems. Just finally coming to terms with that, which happened like this past winter. But it was just mainly like realizing that I had been miserable at work for like 10 years, and deciding that I needed to change something. Otherwise, things were not looking good for my life, if that
Yeah.
makes sense.
Yeah, it
Yeah.
makes a ton of sense. Well, I'm sorry that the past 10 years have been something that didn't feel ultimately fulfilling, but I'm glad that you ended up making that change for yourself and you found this new field in physical therapy.
Yeah. Yeah. Thank
What
you.
what how did that coalesce? How did the physical therapy idea come to your mind? Because like I can't quite see like right away a correlation between the
The
two, but
connection.
yeah.
Totally. Totally. Um, well, I mean, have you ever been to see a physical therapist yourself for any issues?
No, I don't think so.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. I played a lot of sports in high school and college, and had quite a few injuries. Many of them were actually like more stress related. Like I had a very stressful experience with my high school soccer team, and that led to like a lot of just like really bizarre stress related hip injuries. So I spent a lot of time in physical therapy offices like trying to figure out what was up, how do we make this better. um the psychological component was never really addressed, but I just felt extremely like seen there and taken care of. And so that I just had an early, very positive experience with physical therapy. My family actually still sees the same physical therapist like 30 years later in Iowa. So like this person is like almost a part of our family at this point. So it was just like a very positive initial set of experiences. And then I, towards the end of like when I was coming to terms with like, okay, being on a computer this amount of time isn't working for me. I had a pretty bad shoulder injury from the posture I was maintaining at the computer. Like I couldn't raise. It's wild how much like a muscular imbalance can change your range of motion. I couldn't raise my arm above my head. Um, and so I went to see a physical therapist about that. And like that coincided with me just being like, oh, I don't know what I'm going to do with my life. And being like, oh, I love this profession. Like, I think this is so helpful and has helped me. And I see that it helps other people. And so, and it aligned with practice for me. So it really just like clicked. There wasn't a lot of internal like conversation about it. I was like, oh yeah, this is what I want to do. So
Yeah. I mean,
yeah.
I'm really grateful that you had a chance to see a physical therapist early on in high school, and then also too that your family, there wasn't any kind of uh, you know, judgment or oddity among your family, because like your whole family participates in that, like your whole family kind of sees the
I
physical
definitely
therapist.
inherited some of these physical, these like muscular issues from stress-related muscle issues from
Yeah.
family members. So
Wait, so when you say stress related, that means like it's not necessarily from impact injuries or things like that. It's like more attention that you have mentally that then kind of tightens up elements of your body elsewhere.
yeah, so and this is I think about this pretty regularly. Like what was it that led by using a computer to a physical injury? And when you're very honed in to the kind of work I was doing, a sort of like software engineering adjacent, data science adjacent work, you're totally in a mental space. Sometimes like the conduit for that space is the screen you're looking at, but you're really in your mind. And for me, that place is just totally disembodied. I lose track. I'm not keeping track of my breath, not keeping track of my posture. And when you lose that attention, any stress, anything that's sort of embodied stress really starts to take over. And so I start to get very hunched. My left shoulder starts to like creep towards my ear. My neck is just like down like this. And that, you know, group of things work together to like cause like for me, a very painful injury. So yeah. Did I answer
Wow.
that question? I don't actually
Yeah.
remember what you asked, but yeah. Yeah.
Well, no, it was more just I was just trying to understand like the type of injuries that you were having, and like I think that there's a lot more science that's in a more mainstream sense available, where the body keeps the score, and these various like
Hmm.
things that kind of talk about how um, if you're uh, thinking thoughts, and also just having emotional distress, those all kind of impact your physical body and your physical being, in the way that can operate. And yeah, so I can definitely appreciate how being having an occupation that is super heady, having that all that focus and all that energy just kind of leans into one category. And I appreciate how you mentioned it, where it's a heady job. Yeah, you're using a computer, but the computer is more or less like a tool to help you go into your head like further, or like help it kind of like
Hmm.
remain locked in. Uh,
Hmm.
so, and I was curious about this too, where you'd mentioned this has a relationship with your practice, and I could see sometimes sitting zazen or things like that. There are heady elements to that. I mean, I know that there's a certain level of and a certain approach to engagement with zazen, but you're with your thoughts a lot. I mean, I noticed that they bubble up. So has that impacted you, like sitting zazen, has that impacted you physically? And is that a kind of like, was that also like a window into seeing this relationship that you have with your body and stress?
Yeah, I mean, I think Zazen has definitely been part of my journey. That's a major part of like my self-understanding, obviously. Like that's why I do it. Is like it's a practice for me to like see myself. And a lot of my Zazen the past 5 years has been very heady, has been very like I'm stuck in some sort of thought patterns. I almost don't necessarily know that I'm stuck. I'm so in that swirl. And only in like longer sessions does that somehow get cracked open and I'm really like in my body again. And I think those moments of like being like, oh, I'm here, I'm just like sitting, what is my posture, what is am I experiencing my breath, or is it just sort of happening, you know autonomously? um those are, even though they happen a lot more often now for me, that sort of embodied experience, even just getting them every once in a while, thanks to zazen, I consider it to be like an integral part of like my who I am now, and like helping me determine my goals going forward in my life, right? With, vis-a-vis physical therapy. So
Yeah.
yeah.
And with the physical therapy, so you're moving away from a not so ergonomically uh, well positioned kind of chair relationship with your head, with the computer, and everything's kind of like all like focused and crunched up to physical therapy. Do you find that this this new avenue that you're exploring that will kind of have you up on your feet? It'll have you moving yourself to help move other people, like, checking their flexibility or checking their alignments and various things like that. Is that kind of like what you're looking forward to, where you're not just behind a desk, you're more so, I'm sure elements are behind a desk, but you're like engaging with a person, with a living, breathing person, and moving them around, checking them out from all different angles. Is that kind of like what you're looking forward to as far as like getting out of this uh, mental heady space and into a more embodied space?
I mean, yeah, that pretty much sums it up.
Okay.
Like, yeah, hit the nail on the head with that one. I think it's such a, I'm still like, my understanding of the field as a whole is really limited, but the combination of this sort of like manual work, so manual therapy is a big part, using your hands in these pretty sophisticated, highly like, you need to be very sensitive. Clacking away on a computer is driven essentially by efficiency. There's accuracy and efficiency all the time, and there's like an enjoyment to that. But I think what I really want to improve in myself is the sensitivity in my hands and my other, like, sense perceptions, watching people, like trying to understand what people are experiencing, and then have a understanding of how to help them given their specific sort of situation. And then, yeah, just being with people, like being, um I don't know, it just that's how I feel most alive, is through, human relationship, through human interaction. And a big problem for me, which I didn't realize until, later on, was that computer work was very lonely. um just, not I was just in a kind of a cave by myself in some sense. So yeah, that's exactly what I'm looking for. It's just like the embodied experience. It's a mixture of sort of intellectual understanding with physical sensitivity and control. And yeah, there's just a lot that, as I said, it just clicked for me right away once I like actually considered it.
Yeah. And I was curious if you maybe you were always a people person this whole time, or like wanting to be around people, and breaking from this more uh heady occupation kind of helped you realize that, or did you know full well that you like the energy of people, and you like to be around them, and you like to engage with them, and you like to help them, and more or less there was this kind of sidetrack that happened with your occupation that led you away from it, and now you're kind of healing that?
So the current sort of understanding I have of like my arc, um, is that I got really carried away by the sort of like social media, software, big data, whatever current that happened in America in like the mid to late 2020s, And I thought that that intellectual, mathematical, computational work was like the peak of what I could be doing. I was like, this is the most important thing. I need to be really good at this, and this is how I'm going to be, assessed not only internally but externally. So I have to dedicate myself to this. And I didn't really venture outside of that sort of understanding. I was like, this is what I have to do. I didn't really engage with the fact that I wasn't enjoying it. Um, Despite looking back now, realizing that I'm a very social person. Like, what I am happiest when I am hanging out with my friends and I very much seek to like meet new people and um, have those sorts of like relational experiences. It I got one of the another very helpful thing that I did was see a career counselor this past winter, and she ran me through like Myers-Briggs tests, all these sorts of like psychological tests, which, you know, a year or two ago I would have poo-pooed. I would have been like, that's not real science. Blah. But when I sought out that help, I was just in a place where I was like, I need help, and I'm willing to engage with with anything that'll help me introspect and figure out what's going on. And yeah, all those tests were like, yeah, you're an extrovert. You this is where you're gonna find, you know, meaning and vitality in your life. So yeah, that was
Yeah.
helpful to realize.
And I know that you you have been a, I don't know if you're currently still a resident at the Berkeley Zen Center, but you have this in high more engaged than most people have with a Zen center, in the sense that you have like a living practice. You have like a residential practice, or at least you did. Uh, how did you find that experience? Did you find it to be something that uh, nurtured nurtured that extroverted people sense, being around people sense, or was that something that you didn't quite know was helping you um, until now, or until you had that test with your career counselor?
Mhm. Yeah, I'm still a resident at BZC. I'm in my third year living here, and I actually just had my like yearly resident review, sort not review, sort of resident check-in with the residency committee here, and yeah, they asked a similar question, and it's just been oh, might some oh no, are you still there?
Yeah, yeah, I can hear you. I can see you. I can hear you.
My if I don't you know, touch toggle my mouse, my computer goes to sleep. And okay,
No, no, you're
well,
good. You're
um, yeah, it's been a really, really big. I mean, it's a big part of my life. I live here, but like for my life going forward, I'm always gonna like have this experience be one of the most like foundational experiences of my life. It's like I can't promise that anyone living in a Zen center will have an experience like this, but I'm just living with what feels like a second family. Like I love everyone here so much, and just see how much energy everyone, the wider community and the residents, other residents, pour into making practice here possible. And it's just like an incredible feeling to to see that we're all doing this together, and to feel supported and energized by that. Um, and I don't think I knew that that would happen when I wanted to live here. You know, applying here, I was like, living at a Zen center seems like something I would never regret. Like, what an interesting experience. I would really like to see how that affects practice for me. And now that I live here, it's like very hard to imagine living somewhere else. I'm just like, this is the best living situation I've ever had. I mean,
Wow.
living at home, being a kid was pretty great, but best
Yeah.
adult living situation I've ever had.
Yeah. Well, I'm so glad to hear that it's been such a positive thing. And you I guess like, is it like that, the sense where you are constantly in a space that you feel seen in, that you are happy to see people in, that we all share kind of like a that you all share like a common goal in just kind of having the space be what it is? Or is it just kind of like, oh, I didn't realize that uh, having these reminders to practice in all these different ways is helpful for me, because you're kind of constantly seeing it, you're constantly around it. I'd imagine your zazen services and sessions being probably within a stone's throw away. Like, is it the proximity to practice in a more formal sense that has been helpful to you?
Um, so yesterday there was monk leaving ceremony for this long time. He's been here since like the 70s. His name is Ron Nestor. Was like a total rock of the community, and he's moving away. He's moving to live with his sister in Oregon or Washington, I can't remember. And someone asked him if he had any like parting words for the sangha, and he was like, just be yourself. And that is like totally summed up why I love BZC, is because I really feel here more than any other community I've been in is like I can just be myself. I don't need to put on a performance. I don't need to posture or do anything special. I can just be myself here. I don't know I don't know if everyone would have that experience, but that it really draws me to Zen practice, is like this idea of like, all right, well, who am I? What is myself? How can I find what feels really right and true for me? And there's really deep commitment to helping everyone ask that question here. I think, and I feel like with the other residents, with the sangha, I can just be me. I don't need to be something special to be of value, to be cared for. I don't know.
That's
It's
amazing.
Yeah,
That's
it is amazing.
that sounds
It's
pretty
really
ideal.
amazing. Hmm.
I think that's kind of I mean, you're basically you mentioned this before, but you know, that second family element. It's like that does sound like family, you know. That's the
Hmm.
you know, of course, family, right? That can be like a it could be just distressful or you know, upsetting for some people, or you know, there's like a locked in kind of quality to family, but this chosen family element that you can be a
Hmm.
part of it. It's I'm really really happy for you, and that you're there, and that you can not only be there, be you for yourself there, but also
Yep.
allow and be open to people being themselves. um
Yep.
and yeah, no, that's amazing. How did you, so you're, it sounds like you're from Iowa, maybe.
Hmm.
And how did you come across Berkeley Zen Center in the first place?
So I moved to California in like 2013 to start a graduate program in math. I moved to Davis. That program did not work out for me. I left it after a year. Got involved in statistics, agricultural statistics. Eventually moved down to Berkeley to do a master's program in stats at UC Berkeley, and was living on Ashby and King. So, which is like a 5 minute walk from BZC. And I would walk to the Berkeley Bowl, once or twice a week, always past the Zen Center, had no idea it was here. And one day I saw that the little sign says, Berkeley Zen Center. Um, Went and read the pamphlets that used to be out there. I was like, oh, this seems pretty cool. And I just kept going to the Berkeley Bowl. And it wasn't until my brother moved to California to do one of those, software engineering boot camp things. This is, I think, in like 2013, no, 2015, maybe he did that. And living in San Francisco, I don't know how he got started, but he started going to the San Francisco Zen Center. And that's when I think like Zen practice as a thing entered my life, or became like I was like, oh, this seems really cool, but there's no way I can sit zazen for. I didn't know it was called sitting zazen. I didn't think I could sit meditation for any amount of time. I was like totally intimidated by that. And it took another like couple of years and like some, you know, growing up in certain ways. And also, and finally an invitation by my brother to join him at a half day sesshin. And those 4 hours of sitting and like sitting through they were very painful, but coming out the other side and feeling like cracked open, like in a emotionally in a good way. It was like, okay, I want to do more of this. And I already knew Berkeley Zen Center was close to where I lived, so I started showing up every day. Yeah.
Nice. Well, how funny that you would just kind of pass it on your way to Brooklyn Bowl. Is like a rock venue or like a music venue.
Berkeley Bowl. Um, it's a grocery store. It's
Oh,
like it's an amazing grocery store. Highly recommend it if you haven't checked it out. Really, really very exciting produce section
oh wow.
in Berkeley Bowl.
I can't believe I got tickets to it once. No, no, there's a place in Brooklyn called Brooklyn Bowl, and I thought there's like
Okay.
you can go bowling and listen to a music show at the same time. And so I thought that that was like a a bi-coastal thing, but it is not. So all right, but good to know. Yeah, so of course, then you go there a couple times a week, and of course you'd walk by.
Mhm.
And what I think is so cool about your story is that you were like, well, there's a Zen place in my neighborhood. There's one that's close to
Mm.
me, and I know for
Mhm.
myself maybe that proximity is going to keep me going.
Yep.
That I like the vibe and the feel of Berkeley anyway, so maybe that's inherent or flowing within this community anyway. So yeah, I think that there's something very important about knowing like going to the thing that's close to you and checking that out first at the very least. And then it sounds like you have siblings that are kind of spiritually religiously inclined and have like a Zen Buddhist thing. Did you grow up in a pretty open religious environment, or was there already kind of like a track that was going on in your household growing up?
Yeah. I just want to say, sitting in community with other people is so essential to my practice. It would like be very. It'll. I don't know. I'm gonna do my best when I move away from here to like if I have to sit zazen on my own, but I'm kind of nervous about that. Like sitting with other people is a huge like part of like what makes it possible for me right now. So I just wanted to say that because I don't know who's going to listen to this, but yeah, like it's very impressive to me that people maintain zazen practices in their home by
Mm,
themselves. Like that's incredible. So just want to say that. But yeah, my brother and I were raised Reform Jewish in Ames, Iowa. Are There like seven other kids my age, Jews my age. My mom was like the director of the Sunday school, so it was like a pretty small operation. And I definitely considered myself Jewish for a long. Considered myself a religious person um, up until the year that I went to Davis, did graduate school in Davis. Um, that was really I read a book by Christopher Hitchens. God is not great. I was not I was not in a great place, and um, that's where I had sort of my personal. That was like a big moment of like disruption for me, spiritually, relationally with other people, relationally with my family. I just was very, very lost
mm, mm.
in that year. Yeah.
Uh, and I feel like there was a time, I think if I'm placing it right, like kind of the early 2010s or so, is that kind of where the Hitchens, your engagement with Hitchens started happening, or
2013,
2013?
2012, 2013. Yeah.
Yeah, because I was a religious studies major in college, and I ended up writing pretty extensively about atheism, and it felt like the way that I was kind of starting to have it in my life as a student of religion, the God Delusion, Richard Dawkins, and Hitchens,
Hmm.
they were all kind of like maybe had just peaked in the mainstream, or they were kind of like still kind of riding and floating down by the time I got to it, and they had extreme impact
Hmm.
on many, and so and it is a kind of the Wizard of Oz pulling behind the curtain and seeing how you can look at religion and how you can see uh,
Hmm.
the more nasty warts and all elements of religion. Um, and then so you're in this space that is a little bit more uh, a-religious or just a little bit more distant from what you grew up in, and then you find yourself down in Berkeley. Was that a challenge for you to then kind of welcome a Buddhist practice into your life, or was that something that your brother's engagement with it kind of helped you? Oh, well, he can do this, and maybe I can like open myself to that. Like you already had some kind of an inroad, so to speak.
I think part of what made, my engagement, those early moments of engagement possible for me was that I didn't think of Zen as a religion. I was like, oh, this is gonna help me develop a value system, like from a philosophical, like what's the word, empirical, experiential way, uh, um, and it's only in the past couple of years that I've been like, oh, this is a religion. This is like, there's the first few times I came to the Zen Center here, I left before services. So there's in the morning there's 40 minutes of zazen, short break, 20 more minutes of zazen, and then there's a 15-20 minute service where there's some chanting, bowing. I was not interested in that at first, but to me that was just like, that was tertiary. The sitting zazen, sort of reading dharma, reading this sort of like these what I consider philosophical texts, those were like what I was interested in. Does that answer your, I think,
Yeah, no, it did.
yeah.
It absolutely. And then, so
Yeah, I
what?
think,
Hmm?
no, no, yeah, yeah,
Okay,
continue.
so
I think,
you so you had these, you kind of went into it from a as a resource, as something that will kind of help you uh
yeah, yep,
address some things, and then eventually, if I remember correctly, you have received lay ordination. Is that
yep.
right? So
I did. That's right.
so how did religion, or how did the more ritual chanting, bowing elements start to become more appealing to you, or how did they begin to get weaved into your practice?
So for whatever reason, it just didn't really bother me. Like I don't mind engaging in a religious act and not feeling religious about it. So like I've been to Catholic masses. I have, maybe that's it. Maybe that's, I mean, I would have still gone to like Jewish events, Jewish ceremonies, and like participated, but not felt religious or put off by it. And that's sort of how I felt about bowing. I was like, oh, this is decent exercise in the morning. Um,
Hmm.
and it wasn't anything more than that. And now I don't feel hung up about the who am I bowing to or any of that. I'm just like, am I balanced? Am I paying attention to bowing while I'm doing this, or am I thinking about, some other thing? It's more all, when I'm chanting, am I really here chanting or am I somewhere else? It's all an invitation to like presence. I personally don't engage super deeply in like I don't know. I'm not sure what I do or don't engage super deeply. I That's what it is to me. It's all an invitation.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
It's not, maybe it's not for you like this dogmatic doctrine, like heavy thing where it's like, I am here pursuing religion, I am doing this. It's more
No,
so
right.
it's the activities that are all invitations for you to be further
Yeah.
deepened into this practice as what it is.
Yeah, and BZC is really incredible for that. The practice here is not, I don't know. It's very form oriented. But it doesn't feel strict. It doesn't feel dogmatic to me here. It's very much like a year. We're exploring. We're just trying to figure out what's going on in our lives in this moment, and it's not about some adherence to, you know a religious ideal or something like that. I don't know.
Hmm. Hmm. And it also, I think there's value too in doing some of those uh, doing bowing, doing chanting, even if it's not something that you like intellectually uh, are aligning with or fully understanding the philosophical, dogmatic, or doctrinal elements of it, you can just do that to kind of open your mind up elsewhere. Like it's kind of like doing the dishes or something. It's like you're being your part of your mind is being occupied, so then other elements of you can open. And often I'll find myself doing the dishes and thinking of things that are very much superficial or super wavy or whatever it is. But every once in a while, I'll find myself doing the dishes, or I will find myself really trying to be present and like notice how my thoughts just kind of bubble up and percolate.
Yeah. Yeah, yeah,
Uh,
yeah.
and imagine bowing and chanting kind of lets you kind of juggle something else so your mind can actually be a little bit more embodied.
It's ritual, right? It's like it's not on some level it's important what you're doing, but when you're doing that sort of same thing every day, that same form every day, or just like in that sort of regular way, um, yeah, something interesting happens.
Yeah. Well, it's cool that
Dishes
you're
for me too.
yeah,
Dishes for me too, for sure.
yeah. It just kind of it just like that amount of focus in one place allows for focus to happen sometimes momentarily in another place. Yeah, it was so, and I'm curious too, like, so you are someone that is participating in a resident practice program, and you are someone that is very much involved and find meaning in your sangha, and yet you have this kind of appreciation for BCC because it doesn't really tighten up on strict elements, and it kind of allows for some people being who they are. Would monastic living or monastic practice ever be something that you would want to go for in this moment?
Um, Last summer I did a 5-day retreat at um, oh my gosh, a practice place in southern Minnesota. Oh my gosh, the name is totally escaping me. It's the Japanese name. And that was like that was totally silent. It was a very like a strict schedule every day. It was like is a session. And um and I loved that. But I was very happy to leave after 5 days. I was very, very happy to come back to BCC. And I don't I think that the what BZC kind of offers that I don't know if it's unique. There's to me it feels special is this sort of lay practice. And that's kind of what I'm interested in. I'm interested in going and being a Zen student at work every day. I'm interested in going and being a Zen student when I'm at the grocery store. Um I don't know. I don't feel very drawn to a like a monastic experience. Like maybe one day I'll try to do a practice period at Tassajara or Green Gulch, but the thought of leaving my partner for 3 months, or that would be very challenging. It'd be very challenging, and it's just not something I'm especially drawn to.
Yeah, yeah. Uh,
Yeah.
I can appreciate that too. Like I have a spouse and a family and pets and all that kind of stuff, and I just would it, there's a practice element too of just recognizing that where you're just kind of like, well, I uh this is where I'm at, and are these attachments, are these relationships, or these whatever's, but like, are they meaningful? Do they bring meaning to my life? And so it's like, well, maybe I can, and I romance about this, but how can I turn my house into a monastery? How can I turn my life into being a Zen student as I uh go to soccer practice, for the kid, or do whatever it is. So that's something that I try to like remind myself of, in that you don't have to necessarily be uh, in a strict environment, and that just kind of opens up my world a little bit. I just, of course, there are certain things that are of extreme value for people in a monastic training center, but if you can't for whatever reason, you can still kind of apply that more broadly. And I really I could see how much it moves you to be with the Berkeley Zen Center because of that community element. I just want to go back to that because I know that was something that you
Hmm.
wanted to emphasize.
Hmm.
So is it something about this Berkeley environment with these people in these like 4 or 5 block radius that you really connect with, or is it more so like this idea that, well, what's really important for me is to emphasize that being fully wherever you are and serving that community wherever you are, so long as you have a connection to it, like a feeling, a connection to it, that is where you should put the most focus in.
Gosh, that's kind of, uh, I don't know. I hope that it's the latter. I hope that, someday you know, maybe I'll get to live in Berkeley my whole life and get to be, you know, a lifer, whatever. Um, and that would be incredible. And maybe that's not what's going to happen. And what I would like is to take whatever it is that I've learned, whatever embodied understanding I've gotten, I'd like to take that to whatever song I go to and still feel as dedicated and as much like care and attention for that place as well. But I haven't really had that opportunity yet. Hokyoji, the place in Minnesota is Hokyoji. I don't know. You sit with people in a zendo for 5 days and something happens. You just kind of love them. You just kind of like you've all been in as much pain as I have these past 5 days. Like we've I felt really excited to be around those people too. And that I hope that that's what will happen anywhere I go. When you sit with people, when you see them contributing, when you contribute, it all works out.
Yeah.
You know.
And there's this like maybe like a bond that you have when you sit zazen with somebody else, or when you are doing these more intensive programs, that you're breathing the same air, you're experiencing the same weather, the same sunlight as it comes in and out of the window, or things like that, that just kind of are a unifying factor, it sounds like. I've never done
Yeah.
I've never done a session before. How exactly does it work for BZC?
Um, I want to say, if you don't mind, I want to say one more thing is I think there's something special that happened at BZC for like 30 years that I'm coming into. I'm sort of like popped into like the founding teacher here, Sojin Mel Weitzman. I think that he was a pretty extraordinary person. I think he's a pretty extraordinary teacher. And he and his students sort of cultivated something here that I don't I don't know. I think there's something very, very special about that too. Um, I don't know if I could put a name to it, but there is a attention, a commitment, something very beautiful about how things happen here, that I think I especially love. So I don't expect to find that somewhere else. I don't think I'll need to find it somewhere else, but I do think BZC is special, because of the leadership that's been here for a long time. But then about how sashins work here. Um, so there's two major sashins. Um, there's the end of practice period sashin, which is 5 days, and there's oh my god, I'm blanking on the Buddha's enlightenment sashin. Can't believe I'm blanking on the name. It's a 7 day sashin. It's in October, Rohatsu. Um, and the way those work traditionally is traditionally, I don't know what that means. They start at 5 a.m. You have between 40 and 30-minute periods of zazen. I think you have maybe two in the morning with kinhim in between. Then you have breakfast. I think there's a break, like a half an hour or 45-minute break period. Then you're back into zazen and kinhin for maybe another 2 or 3 sessions, periods. Then there's a lecture, and then zazen, lunch, more. I think overall there's like 8 periods of zazen over the course of the day. I don't think there's more than 3 at a time. I think it's usually 2 periods of zazen separated by kinhin and then some other activity. Um, and that's just sort of how it goes. There's a schedule. The schedule is people really try to maintain the schedule. It's posted on the Zendo doors, on the bulletin board, and on the bathroom. So if you ever don't know what you're supposed to be doing, if you missed a clacker or you missed a bell, you can go check the schedule and it'll tell you where you're supposed to be. And there's this comes and goes, but recently there's been a renewal of a commitment to silence, which seems to be something that a lot of people are appreciating. Um, there's very, very little talking. If you need to communicate with someone, you sort of tap them on the shoulder and go off the grounds and say what you need to say. Most communication is done between you and the sesshin director. You're encouraged not to interact directly with other session participants unless you absolutely have to. You can leave notes for people on the bulletin board, and that's really fun. um, that's very fun. The last day of Rohatsu Sesshin last year, I got a note that said burrito from somebody, and we just went and got burritos after the last day of Sesshin, and it was a really good burrito. Um, so it's serious. Everyone's focused, but there's kind of a lot of fun happening below the surface, and it's also very difficult. I don't know. It's zazen can be very painful, and it can also physically and emotionally, um, and it can also be really, really nourishing. So
Yeah. I love that bulletin board element too, because it's like, we're all quiet and we're all kind of melding and kind of falling apart in our own ways, and experiencing all these different embodiments. And then there's also these little personalities that show up because it's your handwriting,
yep,
and there's a lot of personality in handwriting, and then you're
yep,
just kind of stuck on there, and it's like burrito time, or it's like,
yep,
hey, sorry I took your mat, I didn't know if you were coming today, or
yep, yep,
stuff like
exactly that sort of
that.
stuff. Yep.
That's great. Oh man, what a treat, and what a intense. So that's like that could be for 7 days. That could be a 7 day period. And
Mm-hmm.
how does that affect your dreams? Do you are you able to kind of have deeper experiences when you sleep, when you do those session periods, or does it not a kind of effect whatsoever?
Huh. Um, not, it hasn't, gosh, not something I've tracked. I should track that.
Yeah.
Um, I bet if you ask some people, they would say that it has a big effect.
Hmm.
Um, I think, to be totally honest, so what happens for me, I live at the Zen Center. My partner doesn't practice, and a big part of something that we are sort of like growing through as a couple is like, okay, what do we do during sesshin? Because some people just sleep at the Zen Center who aren't residents, and they just go to the community room, lights are out, and they go to sleep. And that's what it was like for me at Hokyoji, which has made it very special. It's like we sit zazen until 9 p.m. and then we go back to our little apartment, take a shower, and go to sleep. But for me here, there's still like I'm kind of back into real life. And so navigating that has been like a part of, well, what is my sesshin practice? And I haven't always done like sometimes I'll like watch TV with my partner at night after and during sesshin, because that's an important part of my relationship, you know. And I think that probably affects the ways in which the depth that I'm going and how much it would affect my dreaming.
Hmm.
Um, so I'd be very curious to see what other people say when they like are really, really in it, because I'm a little like 1 foot in, 1 foot out sometimes.
Yeah, yeah. I I can for sure appreciate that because like and that's the beauty of that lay relationship, that lay ordination relationship, where you have both feet, you know, on both sides of the threshold, and you're engaging, and then you're also engaging in another way, and both of those are
Hmm.
important, and you have to maintain, yeah, TV time and relaxing time and catching up time. That's all super important. So I'm glad that you're able to maintain that. And then what I was curious too about the physical thing, because there's a lot of pain involved, and then you have your past with athletics and some stresses and things like that. And I was curious if one, you can sit in the full lotus or half lotus or things like that. What kind of guidance you'd have for people that are trying to build their bodies up to that kind of practice, and then how do you interpret the foot falling asleep, and how do you kind of go
Oh
about
yeah,
go about that sort of thing?
yeah. Um, I think a thing I wanted to add to the sashimi thing for me personally is I'm not looking for something special in sushi. I'm not trying to have a special experience.
Mhm.
And so yeah, sometimes I do watch TV during a sashimi. And I don't um I think it's the same with when you sit zazen is like y I can imagine putting a lot of pressure on yourself to sit in some way, but you have to ask yourself like why is it because I have some goal here? Like is that what's the energy pushing me to like do this quote unquote correctly? And it's just for me so much more about can I be in touch with my body? Like I move when I sit zazen. Like if my foot's asleep and it's really distracting me and I'm really freaking out because I'm like, oh god, my leg's gonna fall off after this, or I'm not gonna be able to stand up and do the bows and it's gonna be so embarrassing. If it's really distracting, then I'm gonna move because why put myself through that? Like we're trying to end suffering here. Um, that might not be everyone's perspective. I should probably have a conversation about that with my teacher sometime soon. But like, go slowly and be really kind to yourself. Um, and there are people who have been sitting here for 30 years who, to me, they're incredible teachers. They're bodhisattvas, and they sit in a chair. Figure out what's comfortable. If something's very painful, be honest with yourself, right? Like, what? Don't get injured. Definitely don't
Right.
get injured. Um, I don't know what it's like at other practice places, but if there's a time here where I stand up and my leg is totally asleep and I can't get in place for the bowing, then I say, all right, I can't get in place for bowing. So I'm just going to hang out here until my leg wakes back up. And that's okay. And for me, that's an important conversation to just be like, it is okay to like be standing out right now, to like not be fitting in some way. It is, it's okay. And to move during zazen if I need to. It's just like, it's fine.
Yeah.
Um, because it's just so much more important that you're there and that you're supporting what's happening and that you're you know you're doing your best to like see what's going on right now. I don't know. That's my 2 cents there.
No, those are
Yeah.
great 2 cents. And there are elements of that that I need to hear too, because I typically sit cross-legged because my flexibility isn't quite there yet. And there's a lot of sensation that shows up with that. And then
Yeah.
yeah, for sure, if I'm coming off a platform, I have to take a second or else I'm going to fall over. And then that's more embarrassing than taking a second.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
then yeah, like I am one of those people that a lot of my zazen, I try to do zazen daily, and a lot of my zazen is by myself in my home. And sometimes, I spent too much of the day chasing a kid around, or so spent too much time of the day doing such and such thing, and I judge myself for not giving myself the quote unquote correct amount of time to sit. And so I'll reinterpret it, and I'll say, well, as I fall asleep, this is zazen. And then part of my mind will say, well, no, it's not. You're not sitting. I'm like, well, what is, how about this angle of it? What isn't zazen? And then I fall asleep. And so I appreciate you kind of recognizing that there's uh, pun intended, flexibility with how you can approach zazen, and to as you were saying, what BZC is so good about is like to be yourself, allow yourself to be yourself. And to your point about the leadership, I watched very briefly part of Sojin Mel Weitzman's introduction to zazen, which I think was published online on YouTube maybe 3 or 4 years ago. And I didn't watch it from beginning to end, but I would clip in through it, and the way that a very fundamental component of Soto Zen is communicated is just so light and so approachable and so humble and so easy to just listen to. I guess you could just say it's just like a listening experience. And so I know that the one of the founders, if not the founder, is maintained that kind of composure and element to themselves while they were until their old age, or until they were until a couple years ago. And then you also have this other figure, uh, let's see, Hosan Allen Sonake. I'm not sure
Hmm.
if I said the last name correctly.
Hmm. Tsunaki. Yep.
Sonake, and they're someone that just experienced a pretty major health issue, and
Hmm.
and also some travel to Japan uh, after recovery, and they're still recovering, I'm sure. And then I watched part of a Dharma talk with them recently, and there's just this inherent lightness, inherent humility that goes on. And so I was curious about your relationship with those two figures, and also just leadership in general. Like, what are some lessons in general and from these individuals that you've been getting?
Um, well, I'm really glad you've had that experience watching Sojin's YouTube. That's awesome. Um, I had Dokusan with him once, um, and I had a really great experience. I went in, and I had my issue at the time was like, still actually, is how do I talk about Dharma without sort of play acting the Zen student? Um, how do I like really engage with this in a way that feels natural to me, where I'm not just trying to like, you know, be somebody? And so I went and I said, I'm like, don't know how to talk about Dharma because I feel like I always stink of Zen. That was the phrase that was kind of stuck in my mind at the time. Is I stink of Zen. I think that's more from like the '60s. It's kind of been phased out, but that's the phrase that I had. He said, "Well, that's why you should come to Dokusan, so I can tell you how bad you stink." And it was just like he just delivered it. The delivery, the it was just what I needed to hear. Was that like I don't know. It was a joke, but it was also communicated something like really helpful to me, which is that like I can just show up as me, and if there's a problem, someone will let me know, and if there isn't a problem, then just keep doing what I'm doing. So that was a really great experience, and I do kind of regret not trying a little harder to do Dokusan with him more often. But I struggled with the student teacher relationship um, early on. I was pretty uncomfortable saying someone was my teacher. I don't know entirely why that is. Um, but after I got Jukai, which was October 2 years ago, um, I don't know. I was just like, oh yeah, Hozan's my teacher. That's fine, and I don't need to tack on anything extra there. He's just this person that I can rely on if I have a question. And I have other teachers, but like he's my Dharma teacher. He's the abbot here, and he's a person I can really rely on. And even through his health crisis, he's a person I can rely on. And it took me a long time to like feel comfortable with that. And now that I do, it's just like, why was that such an issue for me? But yeah, you
Wow.
just give it time. And things change. I guess it's just, yeah.
Yeah. Well, and two, I mean, it just kind of speaks to them as just being approachable figures, just being approachable people too.
Yep. Yep.
They
Well, the story about Sojin was that his door was always open. You could always knock on his door and he would give you his full attention. Um, and yeah, that's attention is precious, and being that giving with it is pretty. I don't know. There's something cool about that.
and does that bring you into your work with the Young East Bay Zen like initiative or something like that? Like, is that working
Oh
with
yeah.
younger people?
So Young East Bay Zen, which is pretty much on a hiatus right now. It's been on hiatus for like a year almost. It was more just for like the younger people at BZC to like hang out and get to know each other and talk lightly about Dharma and like what their practice was like. And we would like meet at Nick's Pizza. We meet at various like places around Berkeley and just like chat. And that I'd say that came more out of like a need for younger community at BZC. Uh, the majority of the sangha is quite old. They're like there's definitely like a generational there's a generational gap. Literally, like there's like a gap of 1 or 2 decades where there just aren't a lot of people from those age groups, and only recently have more like people from my generation, I'm millennial, more Gen Z people been showing up. And so at this point, we've been talking about bringing Yebs back, but recently just hasn't felt necessary. There's been like a very exciting sort of organic um, direction of the younger generation's energy towards developing a vegetable garden at BZC. And so we like meet fairly regularly to work on this project together. And that seemed to be what people really wanted to do. It wasn't meet at a pizza shop. It was like, let's build something together and really like engage with one another in a way that's gonna maybe push our edges in practice.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Oh, that's awesome. Well, I'm glad
Mm-hmm.
that there's like an organic element to it. That's also, uh, that's also when you are together, it's impacting the space. It's impacting maybe
Mm-hmm.
even the health, right? If you're going to be eating vegetables from this garden, it's all going to be a part of that nourishment. And then I just have one more question before we come to a close on our conversation. Is there anything that you would want to promote? I don't know if there's anything that you're working on personally, or if there's something that BZC is working on, or if there are just other foundations, causes, anything that you would want to have more people know about. If there's anything, or even just it could be even be advice about uh, Buddhism or Dharma that you'd want to have heard yourself as you were kind of coming along the Buddhist path at any point.
Whoa, I totally don't know how to answer that question. Um, I mean, I'd encourage people to find sangha. That's finding people to practice with, um, finding people who look to you like models of practice. People you can be like that. I really appreciate that person's way of being, and I'd like to learn something from them. And that can be a person, it can be a community, but like getting out and interacting with people who has been a you know fundamental for me. Um, if you want to come hang out at the vegetable garden and that intrigues you, reach out to me. I don't know if you'll post my email address
Oh,
wherever I can send that to you. You're welcome to
sure.
post that.
Okay, thanks.
Um, and I think that that's about it. There's plenty of stuff happening at BZC. There's plenty of other really cool, places of practice around the Bay. So check them all out. There's Kojanon in Oakley in Oakland. There's San Francisco Zen Center. All these places have a kind of a different flavor, but they're like all like trying to walk a similar path, and it's just cool to go and see what they smell like and see what they feel like. I think that's um, because BZC might not be the right place for everyone, and it's just like explore and find a place where you feel really good, because that's awesome. It's really nice to feel good in a community. Really,
Yeah.
really nice. So
That's wonderful. Thank you for that encouragement. I think that there is this emphasis of, now that we can all be in person again and do our thing, that you take advantage of that and find that local
mm-hmm,
community and see how it goes.
mm-hmm.
That's wonderful. Well, Yoni, thank you so much for speaking with me today, and I really wish you the best of luck on your physical therapy journey. And I'm so excited that you completed a core element of that already. And I'm just really excited for you and all the wonderful things at BZC.
Thanks, man, and thank you for giving me this opportunity. It's pretty cool to get to tell my story, and um, yeah, it's really nice of you. So I hope you keep in touch too.
Oh, please, yeah, no, I would
Yeah,
love to do it again. And yeah, I'm glad that you've enjoyed our conversation. I certainly have. So to be
cool, great.
continued. All right, all right,
Likewise.
yeah.
Cool.
Thank you, Yoni.
Bye, Vincent.